The vaulted chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with the weight of centuries, its arched ceiling latticed with beams of radiant alloy that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the planet's core. Delegates filled the tiers, their translucent membranes, chitinous plates, and elongated limbs betraying an astonishing range of evolutionary paths. Voices overlapped in a low susurrus, each tongue clicking, humming, or rasping, a tapestry of sound that might have seemed beautiful were it not charged with unease. The day's agenda promised contention, for the subject was one many preferred to avoid, yet none could escape. Whether humanity, that brutal anomaly from a world of storms and predators, deserved a place among them. Chairman Ulrich of the Vaith adjusted the crystalline crest crowning his narrow skull, the gesture meant to convey composure though his pupils quivered like struck mercury. Order, he rasped, his species' vocal cords bending the word into a brittle echo. The chatter dwindled, replaced by the restless shifting of appendages and the soft scrape of ceremonial robes. He inhaled, as though bracing against an invisible gale. We are convened to address the petition of the Terran species. Their representatives will attend shortly as observers. Before they arrive, the matter shall be debated. The word Terran rippled through the chamber like an electric charge. A Kulsar envoy with ridged plates flexed her mandibles and hissed, "We invite predators into this sanctum? Is our sense of self-preservation so eroded?" An Aetheri delegate, his gelatinous form shimmering with agitation, countered with a ripple of luminescence. Predators they may be, but capable predators. Their vessels break orbit with crude yet undeniable efficiency. Their weapons, though primitive, shatter armor thought inviolate. To reject them without hearing would be short-sighted. Others chimed in, some muttering of honor, others of survival. Beneath the surface ran the same unspoken fear. Humans were not like the others. Every species present could trace its rise to fertile worlds with stable climates, where danger had been the exception rather than the rule. Humanity's home, by contrast, was a crucible of hazard. Even in the archives, those dry compendiums meant to strip life of drama. Earth was rendered as hostile, tectonic violence, searing droughts, seas that devoured coastlines, and predators armed with claws, fangs, and poisons. To have endured such a place, let alone to thrive upon it, hinted at a resilience that unsettled the council. Resilience is a veneer for savagery, declared Delegate Ixer of the Drelchi, his segmented body clicking with disdain. Their wars are countless. Their history a chronicle of slaughter. Place them among us, and we invite the contagion of violence. And yet, murmured Ulrich, leaning forward, they survived what would have extinguished us. The chamber grew quiet, for truth, however unwanted, could not be dismissed. The delegates shifted, some averting their eyes, others staring intently as if the chairman had voiced what each secretly acknowledged. The council was built on consensus, but consensus fractured under fear. From a balcony above, two attendants exchanged nervous glances. The arrival of humans had been spoken of in whispers for weeks. Like a storm on the horizon one prays will shift away. Now it was imminent. Soon, two individuals from that dangerous world would stand among them, not as supplicants, but as proof of what their species embodied. Ulrich tapped a slender talon against the polished table. You fear them, as do I. But fear alone cannot dictate law. If they are to be rejected, let it be for reason, not terror. Reason, scoffed the Kulsar envoy. Her voice rasped like stone dragged against stone. Reason dictated that no sapient life could emerge from a death world. Yet here we are, confronting the impossible. Tell me, Chairman, does reason still hold dominion when the evidence itself mocks our certainty? The chamber bristled. The Aetheri delegate shifted colors again, deep violet of unease spilling through his form. Perhaps the humans are the exception. And what is an exception but the seed of change? To deny them may ignite what we most dread, their hostility. That word, hostility, landed heavier than any shouted accusation. The delegates' minds conjured the same image, fleets of human vessels, crude yet numerous, filled with men who had endured a lifetime of struggle before ever touching the stars. The council had survived rivalries, negotiated peace between predator and prey, but never before faced a species so defined by the act of enduring. Ulrich raised his hand, silencing the escalating voices. Enough. Our words circle endlessly. Debate will gain clarity only when the Terrans stand before us. Let them speak. Let us measure them not by rumor, but by their own presentation. The silence that followed was taut, stretched across the chamber like a drawn bowstring. Delegates exchanged uneasy looks, their pride warring with dread. To see the humans was to confront the very limits of their assumptions. A low chime echoed through the hall, signaling the approach of guests. The great doors at the far end, carved from stone older than most civilizations present, began to grind open. Pale light spilled in, casting elongated shadows across the floor. The air itself seemed to thicken, as though instinct warned of what entered. Ulrich straightened, his voice carrying with ceremonial weight. Prepare yourselves. The Terrans arrive. And with that, the chamber held its collective breath. Fear, fascination, and fragile pride intermingled, coiling tighter with every step echoing from beyond the threshold, until the line between anticipation and dread blurred into something sharper. The council had convened to judge humanity. Yet in the deepest recesses of every mind present, a single, unspoken thought grew undeniable. Perhaps it would be humanity who judged them. The doors parted fully, and two men stepped into the chamber. The sound of their boots striking the polished floor reverberated more sharply than any delegate expected, a crisp rhythm that carried an authority of its own. They wore no ornamentation, only dark uniforms of utilitarian weave, fabric scuffed at the edges from travel. To the eyes of the council, accustomed to beings that slithered or floated or stepped delicately on many-jointed limbs, their presence was startlingly solid. Each movement spoke of weight, of density, of a kind of deliberate physicality utterly alien to the fragile grace of most civilizations. The taller of the two, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, swept the chamber with a slow glance that made several delegates flinch, as if the gaze itself were an appraisal of vulnerability. His companion, shorter but thick-set, bore a scar that cut across one cheek like a pale brand, an unashamed marker of survival. Both carried themselves not as supplicants, but as men accustomed to command. Their stride was measured, unhurried, and utterly devoid of deference. The chamber, once alive with debate, fell into an unnatural stillness. A Yevran delegate's frilled neck collapsed inward with a hiss, a biological reflex of fear. The gelatinous aetheri dimmed to a dull, anxious gray. Even Ulrich's talons tapped once against the table before stilling, the only betrayal of his unease. Predators had entered the sanctum, though they bore no fangs or claws in sight. The scarred man glanced sidelong at his companion, lips curving into a dry smile. Told you they'd stare. His tone was light, yet its easy confidence struck the aliens like a blow. Words spoken as jest on earth carried an undertone of menace here, for they revealed no fear at being outnumbered 100-2. His partner answered with a low chuckle. Better than screaming. The sound rolled through the chamber, warm to human ears, but felt by many species as the rumble of a hunting beast. A delegate in the upper tiers swayed, their limbs trembling, and collapsed into the arms of an attendant. They reached the center dais without pause, standing side by side. The taller man inclined his head briefly, a gesture of respect practiced enough to soothe, but not submissive enough to diminish. His voice, when he spoke, carried a deep timbre that resonated in the chamber's acoustics. We are honored to be received. The phrase should have eased the tension. Instead, it sharpened it. There was something in the way he spoke, calm, direct, the cadence of one who had no need to beg, that unsettled the assembly. Politeness without fear seemed, to them, indistinguishable from threat. Chairman Ulrich rose, his crystalline crest trembling faintly. Representatives of Terra, you stand before the council as observers. Know that your presence stirs unease. Our duty is to weigh whether your kind may join us in fellowship. Speak plainly. Why should we extend such trust? The shorter man's scar caught the light as he smiled again, and the effect was somehow more disturbing than reassuring. He did not answer immediately, leaving silence to stretch like a taut wire. Delegates shifted restlessly, the anticipation unbearable. Finally, he shrugged, the gesture casual yet incongruous in such a solemn place. "Because you invited us. And because we came." A murmur rippled through the tiers. To the council, the statement dripped with audacity. To the humans, it was mere fact. An invitation extended, a journey accepted. The gap in understanding widened with every word. The taller man stepped forward half a pace, resting his hands loosely behind his back. "But if you ask why we believe we can stand among you," he said evenly, "it is simple. We endure what others cannot. We build where others would flee. We survive, and in surviving, we grow." The chamber recoiled as though the air itself had shifted. Some muttered of arrogance, others of inevitability. The central conflict, unspoken but pressing, was laid bare. Humanity did not beg for admission. They believed themselves worthy by right of survival, and that confidence frightened more than any weapon could. A delegate from the Kolsar clicked her mandibles in agitation. "Endurance is not virtue. It is the stubbornness of beasts that claw at existence. Do you think this council admires your brutality?" The scarred man's eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. "Brutality." He rolled the word slowly, tasting it as if it were a foreign dish. "We call it living. On Earth, if you lack the will to fight, you die. The cold doesn't care. The storm doesn't care. The predator doesn't care. We learn not to ask for mercy because the world never gave it. That's not brutality. That's survival." His words dropped like stones into deep water, sending ripples that reached every corner of the chamber. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, their instincts screaming that they were hearing something not meant for civilized company, something raw and untamed. Yet the men spoke it as calmly as others might recite a poem. Ulrich raised his hand again, though his voice was less steady now. "You speak of survival, yet we fear what you might do when survival is threatened. Your history, it is painted in wars." The taller man did not flinch. "Yes. And every scar on our history is carved by conflict. But those same scars taught us restraint. We know too well the cost of violence. We don't seek it, but we don't fear it either." That answer, paradoxical and unyielding, left the chamber in a hushed paralysis. For many, it confirmed the deepest dread. Here stood a species for whom war was neither aberration nor obsession, but a tool wielded with grim familiarity. They could no more unlearn conflict than unlearn breathing. The scarred man leaned forward, gaze sweeping across the tiers of assembled species. "You want to know if you can trust us? Ask yourselves this instead. Can you afford not to?" The question lingered in the charged air, not an answer but a challenge, and it landed with more force than a fleet of warships. In that moment, the council understood they were not weighing a petition. They were standing at the edge of a precipice, forced to look down into a chasm of possibility and danger. The humans fell silent, offering no further justification. Their presence, their words, and their very ease within the chamber spoke more than arguments ever could. The council, in turn, could do nothing but absorb the revelation and grapple with the new shape of fear that had entered their world. The taller man allowed the silence to breathe, as though he were giving the delegates time to weigh his words against their fear. When he spoke again, his tone was measured, calm, yet every syllable carried a weight that pressed upon the chamber. "You wonder what it means to be human. You imagine our world as legend, a furnace of cruelty that could only forge cruelty in return. But you mistake us if you think survival has made us mindless beasts. It has made us aware, painfully aware, of what is fragile, of what is precious, of what can be lost." His scarred companion shifted his stance, crossing his arms in a gesture that conveyed not defiance, but unshakable certainty. "On Earth, everything is trying to kill you. The air strips heat from your body until you freeze. The sun burns skin to ash if you linger too long. Mountains collapse without warning, seas swallow ships, Forests hide venom in every thorn. We buried friends, brothers, fathers not because they were weak, but because the world itself takes what it wants. You speak of brutality as if it were our invention.
No.
It is the earth that taught us what it costs to live. Murmurs spread like cracks through the assembly. Some delegates whispered in disbelief, others in horror. The Aetheri delegate pulsed with flickers of pale fear, as though the imagery itself seared his substance. A frail diplomat, whose race had never known a predator larger than an insect, trembled visibly at the thought of a world that punished every misstep with death. The taller man continued, his gaze steady, his voice as calm as if recounting weather reports. We grew strong not because we desired strength, but because weakness meant extinction. We learned to fight not because we loved war, but because storms and beasts and famine gave us no choice. And when the world threw its worst at us, we did not surrender. We adapted. That is humanity's nature, to endure and to endure together. The scarred man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Some of you call us violent. You're right. We've fought wars that scarred our planet, and each time we swore it would be the last. Yet even in war, we created. Out of ruin, we built medicine, technology, ways to cross oceans and skies. We even crossed the void between stars with machines that by your standards are primitive. But we got here. Without your counsel, without your guidance, without your protection. The words struck harder than a weapon. The Council had always imagined themselves gatekeepers of galactic civilization, but here stood men who declared, without arrogance, only certainty, that humanity had no need of their permission to exist among the stars. That admission alone unraveled centuries of assumption. Ixer of the Drelchi slammed his segmented limbs against the floor. You are dangerous. You speak of storms and beasts and wars as if they were teachers. We are not blind to your implication. You would bring those lessons here. The taller man met the accusation without blinking.
No.
We would bring what we learned surviving them. To value peace because we know how fragile it is. To value life because we have buried too much of it. If you fear us, perhaps it is because you cannot imagine surviving what we have survived without becoming monsters. But we are not monsters. We are men. The scarred man's voice cut in, sharp as a blade. Do not mistake restraint for weakness.
We do not seek conquest.
We don't need it. But understand this. If anyone tries to chain us, we break chains. If anyone tries to cage us, we shatter cages. And if anyone seeks to erase us, then yes, we fight. And when we fight, we win. The words echoed, stark and undeniable. Delegates shifted in their seats, their minds replaying the sentence again and again. When we fight, we win. Spoken without bravado, it sounded less like a threat than a statement of natural law. Silence settled heavily over the chamber. Even Ulrich found no immediate response, his crystalline crest drooping with uncertainty. Around him, the delegates avoided meeting one another's eyes, as though any acknowledgement would make the humans' words more real. For the first time in memory, the council seemed small, its grand chamber diminished beneath the shadow of two men who had done nothing but speak truth. The taller man looked to his companion, then back to the assembly. We stand here unarmed. No fleets behind us. No armies waiting. Only two men. If our words alone shake you so deeply, then perhaps the question you must ask is not whether you can trust us, but whether you are ready for what trust demands. Because humanity will not bend itself to fit into your order. We will stand as we are, or not at all. He stepped back, folding his hands behind him, and the scarred man mirrored the motion. They said nothing more. The council chamber throbbed with the silence of creatures confronting an alien truth too large to swallow, too raw to dismiss. The humans had not roared, had not threatened, had not drawn weapons. They had only spoken, and it was enough to unravel the composure of civilizations that had never known a world with teeth. Chairman Ulrich exhaled slowly, the sound brittle in the air. His voice, when it finally emerged, was thin, uncertain. The council will deliberate. The taller man inclined his head once more, expression unreadable. Then deliberate well. The two men stood still, side by side, calm as stone, while the chamber seethed with fear, fascination, and the dawning realization that the galaxy had changed the moment they walked through those doors. The chamber dissolved into chaos the moment the humans fell silent. Delegates who had long cloaked themselves in the pomp of reason now sputtered with panic, their composure shattered like fragile glass. Some shouted for immediate expulsion, their voices high and trembling, while others hissed of alliance, of opportunity, of inevitability. The grand hall, designed to amplify voices into harmonious unity, became a cacophony of fear. Chairman Ulrich struggled to command order, his crest trembling under the strain. His talon rapped against the table again and again, but the delegates no longer heeded him. The words of the humans had taken root, and the council could not agree whether those roots heralded the growth of new understanding or the spread of poison. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with dread, as if the very walls recoiled from what had just transpired. At the center of the storm, the two men remained motionless. They exchanged no more than a quiet glance, their calm at once incongruous and terrifying. Surrounded by species who possess fleets, empires, and vast histories, they stood as though nothing here required their defense. Their silence mocked the chamber's frenzy, suggesting that the council's deliberations were not verdicts but delays, distractions in the face of inevitability. Finally, the scarred man broke the stillness. His voice was not raised, yet it cut through the clamor with surgical precision. "We thank you for your time." The words fell like a stone into deep water, silencing the uproar not by command but by contrast. The delegates froze, some mid-syllable, as though realizing too late that they had revealed their fear too openly. The taller man inclined his head in a gesture of courtesy, though his eyes betrayed nothing. Then, without further explanation, the two men turned and began to walk toward the great doors. Each step echoed in the chamber, steady and deliberate, a sound that struck harder than any shouted demand. The aliens watched, transfixed, as if expecting violence to erupt at the final moment. Yet the humans did nothing but walk. They carried no weapons, no guards, no visible protection. They had entered as two men, and now departed the same, but the chamber felt forever altered in their wake. As the doors opened to release them, the Aetheri delegate whispered, his luminescence flickering with fear, "They brought no armaments, no fleets." And yet, his words trailed into silence, but the thought rippled across the assembly. The humans themselves were the weapons. Every scar, every hardened glance, every calm syllable was forged of survival, so alien it made even the fiercest warriors here tremble. Chairman Ulrich slumped back into his seat, his crystalline crest dulled. He understood what the others had not yet dared to articulate. The council had not been judging humanity. Humanity had judged them, and their verdict had been wordless. The humans had shown them a mirror, and in it the delegates saw their own fragility reflected in cruel relief. The scarred man's laugh carried faintly back into the chamber as the doors shut behind them, a low, human sound that resonated like thunder. To the ears of the council, it was not mirth but inevitability. It was the sound of men untroubled by the fear they left behind. Inside, the council chamber remained hushed, the weight of revelation pressing down like a physical force. Delegates exchanged furtive glances, unwilling to break the silence. Every species present understood that a choice loomed. They could shun humanity and risk its wrath, or they could embrace humanity and risk its influence. Either way, the galaxy would no longer be what it had been yesterday. Beyond the chamber, down the vast corridor lined with ancient murals, the two men walked shoulder to shoulder. The taller one exhaled slowly, as though releasing tension that had never been visible. "That went well," he murmured. His scarred companion grinned. "Better than expected. Nobody fainted twice." The taller man chuckled, a deep rumble that seemed to carry both relief and amusement. They did not speak of threats, nor of strategies, for neither was needed. Their presence had been enough. The council now carried the weight of choice, and humanity would move forward regardless of its decision. Outside the ornate hall, the air smelled different, cleaner, freer. The men paused at the top of the steps, gazing out over the sprawl of alien architecture that glittered beneath a foreign sun. The taller one squinted against the light. "Think they'll vote in our favor?" The scarred man shrugged, his expression easy. "Doesn't matter. They'll act in our favor, whether they mean to or not. Fear is a strong motivator." They descended the steps, their boots striking stone with the same calm rhythm as before. Behind them, high in the council chamber, arguments flared once more, but the humans paid them no mind. The galaxy would debate, doubt, and scheme, but the course of humanity was already set. As they reached the base of the stairs, the taller man looked at his companion, a flicker of something more thoughtful passing through his eyes. "Still," he said softly, "I hope they choose alliance. It's easier to build than to destroy." The scarred man's grin faded into something quieter, though his eyes remained sharp. "Easier, yes. But if it comes to it," he let the sentence trail off, unfinished but heavy with implication. The taller man nodded once, understanding without further words. They walked on, their silhouettes stark against the alien skyline, leaving behind a chamber of terrified dignitaries and a galaxy that now knew what it meant to stand in the presence of Deathworlders. And as the council argued over treaties, sanctions, and strategies, none could shake the memory of two unarmed men who had spoken as if their species carried inevitability itself in their veins. The terror they left behind was not of invasion or conquest, but of possibility. The possibility that humanity would reshape the galaxy not through force, but through the simple, undeniable fact of surviving everything the universe hurled at them. The council would deliberate. Humanity would endure. The true conflict had only just begun.